What is up, everybody, and welcome to my weekly live Q&A episode 49, so nearing 50. My name is Danny Segura. I am a mixed martial arts reporter for MMAJunkie.com. And like I said, this is my weekly live Q&A where I answer all your questions regarding the combat sports world and more. So plenty to talk about. It's been quite busy in the MMA world, so we're going to get to a lot of news here in just a second. But right before we get started, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share it, let your friends know about it, tag me on that thing, I'll retweet you and everything, I'll give you some love. And yeah, so anyways, with that out of the way, and by the way, just a quick announcement, over in my Spanish YouTube channel, Hablemos MMA, I just dropped this morning an interview with Alejandra Lara, who competes at Bellator 255 on Thursday or Friday. So yeah, she has a pretty big bout, so that was a pretty good interview, as well as a review of UFC 260. That's also on that channel. So if you're looking for the best Spanish content in mixed martial arts, make sure you head over to Hablemos MMA. I believe it's a featured channel on this YouTube channel, so it should be fairly easy to find. All right. With that out of the way, like I said, there's plenty to talk about. Obviously, we're coming off a pay-per-view, UFC 260, which went down last Saturday, where the heavyweight title for the UFC was on the line. So obviously, a huge fight, no pun intended. And then, a bunch of news came out of that, especially tying up former UFC light heavyweight champion Jon Jones. Like I said, we have Bellator 255 this coming weekend. No UFC event this weekend, which is a bit odd. First time in a while, which is good. It's good to have weekends off every now and then. And yeah, what else? There's also a few things circling around as far as news, and we'll get to them down the line. So I'm going to tackle the Twitter questions first, and then I'm going to head over to a YouTube live chat and take questions from there, right? So if you didn't ask questions on Twitter, no worries. You'll get to do so at whatever moment you please in the YouTube live chat. So if you got any questions, drop them in the YouTube live chat, and I'll get to them eventually at some point in the later part of this video. Sounds good? All right, so let's get started with the Twitter questions. The first question is going to be by Darby Crash 81, and he wants to know, do you think Ngannou will be the UFC's version of Mike Tyson and become its biggest star? And how happy is Dana that he no longer has Stipe as a champ who could be difficult and hated the spotlight? So, good question. The first part of that question, I think it's undeniably true. I mean, Ngannou, obviously Mike Tyson was a bit of a polarizing figure, both in and out of the ring, right? There was a lot of controversy in the ring as well as outside of it. Ngannou doesn't have that. Ngannou is not really a controversial figure. He doesn't fight dirty. He doesn't cross any lines. He doesn't talk bad trash talk per se. Like he might say some things, but it's more out of confidence than out of disrespect. He's not out there calling people names or doing anything crazy. So on that end, they're vastly different. But I would actually even dare to say that, I mean, that still's true, but certainly having somebody with a clean presence like Ngannou is good, right? Less issues down the line. Mike Tyson was a little bit of a loose cannon, right? But Ngannou seems to have a solid head on his shoulders, so I don't think we'll be seeing him getting into any type of trouble, or at least that's what sort of he's communicated through his demeanor and everything else until now, right? But as far as this fighting style, yeah, I mean, this dude's huge, the biggest heavyweight out there, has a ridiculous knockout power, just absolutely brutal. I mean, some knockout power that is historic. I mean, he's the hardest hitting fighter ever in mixed martial arts, or at least the UFC. I mean, I can't really think of anybody else that hits harder than Ngannou. There isn't. I mean, if you think of a name, drop it in the live chat. That'd be an interesting debate. But really, there isn't anybody like Ngannou as far as punching power, and we know that attracts the casuals and even the hardcores. It's something that appeals to absolutely everyone. Punching power is just a beautiful thing to watch, and yeah, Ngannou has plenty of it. So he's going to be a big start for the UFC. Also, he's 34 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And he's got very low mileage as far as mixed martial arts is concerned. I mean, the guy's been fighting since 2013. Okay, so nearing a decade. But still, that's plenty of time. At least at a high level, he hasn't been fighting more than 6 years, right? He joined the UFC in 2015. So, and really, he only tasted like top-notch competition when he versus Arlovsky in 2017. So he's been facing top-notch competition for about 4 years. That's nothing. John Jones has been doing that for a decade. You know what I'm saying? So the great thing about Ngannou is that he's got low mileage. He's young for heavyweight. He looks in ridiculous shape. Doesn't seem like he's gonna get into any type of trouble, anything outside of the cage that will hinder his athletic career. And he's got plenty of years left. I can see Ngannou fighting for quite some time. So yeah, I think he's going to be a huge star. That UFC belt does wonders as far as promotion, and giving his backstory and his ridiculous knockout power, he's going to be huge for the promotion. And as far as the second part of the question, how happy is Dana that he no longer has Stipe as a champ, who would be difficult and hated the spotlight? That only Dana knows, obviously, but I'm sure that part of him is somewhat happy that this happened. Just as you mentioned, he's a guy that didn't want to promote himself. He's a guy that didn't care about the spotlight, and you don't necessarily have to care about it, but at least play the game. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, you're also selling pay-per-views, not only for yourself to make money, but for the company and your employer, I guess, the company that you work for. So in this case, it is good that at least for the UFC, that Stipe is no longer champion, because you got a more marketable version. You got somebody that's younger. You got somebody that basically those two, more marketable and younger. And one huge thing that I think is great for the UFC and super healthy thing for the heavyweight division, and it sucks because I really like Stipe, so I don't want to trash him here, but Ngannou's active, man. Ngannou's active and wants to be active. Stipe fought once a year. He fought, check this out, UFC 260, obviously, right now, 2021, UFC 252, 2020, UFC 241, 2019, and UFC 226, 2018. The guy was fighting about once a year, and that's not a good thing for the division. You want the belt circulating, and something that was hurting the heavyweight division was that there was only one escape, one fight, one title fight, one championship fight a year. And those contenders that were online, it's more than one a year that get to the top. So they were just knocking each other off because they got to fight. They got to make money and they got to continue their careers. They can't just sit around and wait for the next year to hopefully maybe get a title shot. By then, somebody else has more victories than you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a pretty bad thing for the division. I think Ngannou can easily, at a bare minimum, clock in 2, maybe 3 fights a year. I wouldn't be surprised if the man does 4. I don't know if the UFC will let him, but I think he's capable of doing that, especially given the nature of his fights, which are not too wear and tear on his body. They're fairly quick, right? It's a good thing for the UFC. That's the truth. I mean, it's tough to say, but you got a younger champion, a more marketable champion, a champion that's willing to work with the UFC a little bit more. A champion that's going to be more active. That's all good news for the promotion and ultimately Dana White. So I believe he's happy. Maybe not that Stipe lost, but I'm sure they like Stipe, and he had some nice things to say about Stipe post-fight, but more on the end of, hey, we got sort of a better deal right now. All right. Next question is by Michael Terrell, and he wants to know, How much do you think Stipe's weight was a factor in the outcome of the fight? That's a great question as well. I think I've seen a lot of banter about it online, talking about Stipe's weight. Obviously, he came in pretty light, right? Like 230 something, um, which is a big difference comparing Ngannou's weight. And yeah, I do believe it plays a factor, but I don't think it hurt him. I don't think it was negative. I think ideally, like when you fight somebody like Ngannou, you want the speed. Like I was looking at recently at some highlights of their first fight, and Miocic's movement was amazing, and not only that, but his head movement as well, his defensive ability, which you got to be agile and fast. I mean, Ngannou was throwing bombs, and he was just making him miss 24/7. So that's why he didn't get knocked out the first time out and had such a good performance. But yeah, that's what you needed. I think the weight was on point. I don't think it hurt him in any way. I think if anything, it helped his performance, even though he lost badly via knockout. I think the biggest thing here, and something that is getting missed, and everyone's talking about the weight and focusing about the weight, what about the size of the octagon? It is 30% smaller. And maybe when you have some flyweights, 125-pound fighters in there, it doesn't feel that much smaller. Maybe the difference is not that big. But when you got guys of the size of Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic, you definitely see the difference. There's less room to run. And what's the plan? If you want to be agile, you want to be quick on your feet, you need also space to run, right? It's not only about being able to have quick reflexes and get out of Ngannou's strikes. I don't know if maybe the bigger octagon would have actually had a significant difference. I think maybe, if you really think about it, like if Stipe can pull off sort of one of these Overeem strategies where, make fun of him or whatever you want to do, but they're effective, and he just literally wants to turn his back and run, and just get him tired, right? Because literally first and second round, that's where Ngannou is going to be the most dangerous. Now, with the way he's fighting, it seems he's going to be able to sort of stretch that a little further. But still, I mean, if I were to ask you right now, you probably wouldn't pick either. But if you had no choice, would you rather fight a first-round Francis Ngannou or a fifth-round Francis Ngannou? I think everyone will go with the fifth. Just given his physicality, there will be a toll to pay as far as cardio-wise. There's no way around that. So I think the octagon, if anything, had probably a bigger issue here, or a bigger factor, was a bigger factor than Miocic's weight. I think his weight was perfect. I think for an Ngannou fight, that's what you want to come in as. A good example of this happened a few years ago, many years ago actually, when the heavyweight division was at its peak. We had Shane Carwin, right? We had Brock Lesnar, two huge guys that would cut to 265. And at the time, there was a few other big guys, and sort of the whole trend was to get jacked. And I remember Frank Mir, who's a jiu-jitsu guy and usually would use his agility and speed, being a smaller heavyweight, for his advantage, decided to bulk up. And then he was stuck in this weird in-between where he wasn't stronger than Carwin or he wasn't stronger than Lesnar. But the things that made him or have an edge over those guys, which were speed, were gone because he got so big. And he spoke about it extensively post-fight, post the Carwin fight. But that'd actually be a very interesting point to talk about, because I feel like that conversation doesn't happen often. But if I ever do talk to Frank Mir, I'd like to go in depth about sort of the science behind bulking, because I do believe there's a place and time for that. But also, slimming down and fighting these bigger guys where you think you have a disadvantage being so small, but actually, you can shift, depending on your game plan, you can shift into a gear that allows you to be more agile and fast, and that actually turns out to be for your advantage. So that's actually a very interesting topic, that whole thing. But yeah, great question. I don't think by any means Miocic's weight was bad in this fight. I think that's the weight that he should have came in at. Alrighty, next question, also by Michael Terrell, and he wants to know, I feel like Jones versus Francis is a better return on investment than Lewis versus Francis. Why is Dana not hyping up Jones? Well, it might be a better return, but also Jones is more expensive than Lewis. He's been champion. He's a legend. He's a living legend. That's what he is. He's one of the greatest to ever do it. So certainly the greatest light heavyweight of all time. That's undisputable. So yeah, I mean, Jones is probably a little more pricier. We know that they get a solid amount of money, or it's been reported by ESPN per pay-per-view no matter what. So the buys didn't become irrelevant, but they certainly lost importance. Now, I'm not saying the UFC doesn't care about marketing. I'm not saying the UFC doesn't care about putting on big fights. They certainly do, and they certainly pay off, right? Like a McGregor fight brings in good money, right? But the urgency to sort of make that a priority has kind of died down, or at least been turned down the volume just a notch. So maybe that's one thing. Also, I don't think the UFC and Dana White, they like to play on their terms. I don't necessarily think that they would want to give a one-up to Jon Jones and be like, all right, well, you got us here, but we got the fight that we wanted. No, I think they want everything on their terms. And who knows how much money is Jon Jones asking, right? That's what he wants. He wants more money. It seems that whatever he wants should be fairly reasonable considering who he is in the sport, and how much money the UFC makes. But again, we don't know, right? So we'll see how that all turns out. And why is he not hyping Jon Jones? This is kind of interesting. It's like Dana White is not your typical promoter, and that's something that like I've been learning more about like recently that I've been getting into boxing a bit more. There's no sanctioning body in mixed martial arts. So when you're a promoter, it almost feels like you have a team, right? Like you're supposed to promote these guys. Not Dana White specifically, but the UFC, it's its own sanctioning body. It's a UFC title, right? It's not the WBO or whatever. It's their own title, but they're also the promoter. So they have a bunch of, I guess, per se, not exactly, but conflict of interest in the sense of they're promoting all these guys, but all these guys are fighting each other as well. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, promoter A is putting their fighter against promoter B's. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I mean, we'll see how that all develops and how it turns out. But I'm surprised Dana White is not surprised, but I think there are maybe other routes on going about, getting Jon Jones to fight Francis Ngannou. I think, whatever happens backstage, but publicly, like he feels ashamed, I feel like, with all the tweets that we've seen in the last few days. He feels disrespected by some of the comments. And, again, I'm not saying that Jon Jones is going to be like, well, my pride is so big, even if you give me all the money in the world, I'm not going to fight. I'm sure, money will amend things, but the emotional part of it is still a thing. You know what I'm saying? It certainly doesn't make it easier when you're going to negotiate. So, yeah, it's just interesting how public this whole thing is. I think probably the best approach would be to have a more private approach to it. All right. Sharky wants to know thoughts on OMalley's performance. First time in over 2 years we got to watch more than a round of him, and although it was a weak Almeida, Sean pieced him up and came out with no damage. Who's next for Sugar Show? So let's talk about first his performance. His performance was actually very good. I was not necessarily surprised, but I was curious about how he was going to bounce back from his first professional defeat, because it certainly looked like, at least from my end, I don't know how you guys feel about it, that Chito Vera was living rent-free in his head. I mean, he just couldn't shake that one off. And yeah, it really looked like, till this day, that loss is still in his mind. He might say, like, oh, whatever, play it down. It wasn't really a defeat, but he's talking about it. You know what I'm saying? And Chito keeps tweeting at him, and they go back and forth. But But yeah, so I was curious to see how he would bounce back. Also, I feel like that injury that he had during the fight caused by a Chitoeda kick was pretty substantial. So I was wondering if maybe that's actually a weak spot of him, or maybe if it was just that specific accident per se. And if it was a weak spot, someone like Thomas Almeida, who has a Muay Thai background and can kick, I was wondering if Almeida was gonna exploit it, and he didn't really had a kick heavy game plan, but he did land several kicks, and OMalley seemed to defend well, and he took a few of them, and he took them well as well. So yeah, on that end, he checked all the boxes. I did have some reservations about it, but as far as the performance itself, we've seen OMalley do things like that. So it was just, again, like you mentioned, very O'Malley-like performance, but this time we saw it over a long period of time and not a short period of time, how we're usually used to seeing. So yeah, interesting stuff. And as far as what's next for Sugar Show, I believe he called out, I saw something. Didn't he call out Dominic Cruz? Am I tripping? Let me look that up. So I'm not talking shit here. So apparently, let's see here. Okay, so apparently Chael Sonnen said that Dominic Cruz texted him saying that he wanted to fight Sean O'Malley. And then O'Malley responded. O'Malley responded that he'd be about it and he would want to fight on July 10th in the co-main event of Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor trilogy, which nothing set on stone, nothing has been signed, at least according to reports, but it looks like that's the target date for that trilogy fight. So I don't hate it. I think it'd be a fun fight. It'd be, to be honest, it'd be kind of the matchup, if you translate it to boxing, Ryan Garcia asking for Manny Pacquiao. It'd be something like that. I'm about it. The new blood versus the I guess the young blood versus the new blood. Or the old blood. It's early. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see, but I think that fight makes sense. A fight with Dominic Cruz makes sense. I'm about it. Why not? I think the beautiful thing about the UFC bantamweight division is that there's so many options for everybody. I mean, that right now is the best division in the UFC by far. But for example, a rematch with Chito Vera, I would actually be interested. I think if anything, it's escalated more. And it's a bigger fight than it was a few months ago. I think there's real bad blood there. I think a fight with Jimmy Rivera would make sense. A fight with Pedro Munoz would be a lot of fun. A fight with Frankie Edgar would be fun as well. Obviously, Frankie Edgar had a pretty bad knockout in his last fight. I don't know if he's still suspended or still recovering, but obviously if he's eligible to fight. Even Marlon Moraes, who's ranked number 6 and has had some issues, right? I believe he's on a bad losing streak right now. That would make sense too. He's up in the rankings. But I don't hate the Cruz fight. I think the Cruz fight would make sense. And it would be a fine co-main event for a McGregor-Poirier trilogy. So I'm about it. I think that fight makes sense. In fact, yeah, I like the Cruz fight a lot. I'd say that one. All right, let's see here. Darby Crash again. Darby Crash asks, was the 50 grand awarded to Woodley for Fight of the Night a parting gift by the UFC before they cut him? And I don't believe he's a top 10 fighter anymore. Agree or disagree? A parting gift, I mean, it was earned. I would say that was the best fight of the night. Like the fight that got me the most excited, the fight that got me most glued to the screen, from an action standpoint, probably that fight. I mean, the Ngannou fight was great against Miocic. It was an entertaining fight, and obviously when you got two heavyweights going at it, you're always on edge because anything can happen at any given moment because any punch can be significant. But as far as just craziness, Luque versus Woodley was it. I mean, that fight had so much drama within the 2 minutes that it lasted. It was pretty crazy. So maybe there was something to it. But I think it was rightfully awarded. I don't think they gave him a gift, and maybe there was another fight that was more deserving, but just to sort of give him a gift, they awarded him the fight of the night. No, I think in this occasion, Woodley versus Luque was the fight of the night from UFC 260. And I don't know what's gonna happen. I think they are gonna cut him, or I believe that was his last fight on his current UFC deal. I don't know. He posted a statement on Instagram, which I actually haven't checked out. So let me pull that up and read it. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Woodley. I think he's at a very interesting point of his career. It's so weird what happened to him, really. It's so strange. Yeah, so this is what he wrote on Instagram. Shit was going really well until it wasn't. My camp pushed me in ways I haven't been pushed in a while. I committed. I swore to myself I would bring the trigger out. That earned me gold. I saw the opportunity for the KO and got too excited. Paid a big cost. I don't regret my aggression, as that was what God created me to do. Vicente Luque is a tough and humble fighter. It was an honor to share the cage with you tonight. Look, props to Tyron Woodley. I know a lot of people hate on him, but he really went out on his shield at UFC 260. That's the Tyron Woodley that people want to see. And look, it might get you knocked out, but what's the alternative? Losing a dominant 5-round decision, with little action? Nobody wants to see that. So, and it's a hard decision to make because you're taking a lot of damage, right? That's putting yourself at risk. And obviously we saw that he got wobbled and he got hurt. He's been knocked out before by Nate Marquardt, right? Back in Strikeforce. But as far as UFC, he's never been as hurt as he was against Luque. So props to Tyron. Much respect. He's certainly a warrior. And for everybody that was kind of shitting on his fighter spirit, well, he showed it at UFC 260. We'll see what's next for him. I think if he wants to continue fighting, I think that's fine. He's not a guy that's taken a ridiculous amount of damage throughout his career, so I don't have concerns as far as health-wise. I do not think, to answer the second part of your question, I do not think he's a top 10 fighter anymore. I think anybody in the top 10 could be fairly, not easily, but would probably be a favorite going into a Tyron Woodley fight. I think he's maybe a top 15, and even then, I don't like his chances against some of the fighters there. He's certainly somewhere along the top 20. And he has a big name, and he's in good shape. He has power. He obviously showed that, and he cracked Luque. Look, I think we clearly saw an improvement here from the last few fights. I think he can continue on improving. Maybe not improving, but adjusting his game in a way so he can fight and be more effective with whatever he's got as far as skills-wise left. I think he can do that and win some fights. I think he can do that and pick up some victories here and there. I just don't think he can do it against the very top. So if that's the case, just go to another organization. Go to Bellator. There's other organizations out there. Go to Rise and go to One and get matched up against fighters that are not top 15, fighters that are around the top 20. And look, he can still headline cards. He's a big name, put on exciting fights and pick up a few victories and close out his career on a nice streak, maybe, or at least on a better record than, 0-4. So we'll see. But yeah, Woodley is proved no longer top 5, no longer top 10. I doubt he's top 15. He's more around a top 20 fighter. What a crazy and sharp decline that man had, because not so long ago he was UFC champion. It's so crazy. I don't know what happened. I don't even know who he's training with now, but if he hasn't already, changing camps would certainly serve him well. But again, he's almost 40 years old. I believe he turns 39 in April. So what do you expect from a 40-year-old fighter, it's a natural process. You know, it's the fight game is a young man's sport. All right, A Passive Wogan is the biggest hater on this live chat, and he wants to know, what do you make of Tony training with not only Roach but apparently GSP as well? Good sign of changing things up, or a little too late? Probably a little too late. I think I have a lot of reservations about Tony Ferguson. I think his days as a elite lightweight are gone. And he's almost 40 as well. How old is Tony Ferguson? Let me pull that up. He must be like 37 or something like that. 36, 37. Especially at lightweight. I think if you were a heavyweight or a light heavyweight, he's 37. You know, you can be a little older and be okay, but at lightweight, it's just not gonna happen. So I think it's a bit too late. Now, can he still improve and maybe even show up better than he did in his last few performances? Yeah, for sure. Especially Ferguson, because he actually puts in the work, and that's a man you cannot question his dedication at all. He's as dedicated as they come. He lives and breathes fighting. So, yeah, it's a good thing. Sure. I don't know if he's training with GSP or they just happen to be in the same gym. I think more likely they just happen to be in the same gym. I don't think he added him to his camp. I doubt he did. But yeah, training with Freddie Roach, getting his boxing sharpened, I think it's good. I think the Benio Dariush fight is good because Dariush is not a top 5, you know. Gaethje's a top 5. Oliveira's a top 5. Dariush, more of a top 10 fighter. We'll see. Maybe he makes the leap, right? That's why he's getting matched up with Ferguson. But this is kind of like the Tyron Woodley, Vicente Luque matchup that we're seeing. Guy that was up here, is falling down, gets a step down in the rankings, and it's like, all right, let's see what you got. Like, are you still here, or you know, or you're not? So we're gonna find out in that matchup. I believe it's at UFC 262. It's a good one. It's a fun one. And it's a huge fight for Tony Ferguson. He's really fighting for his career. If he takes another L and he's 0-3 at 37 years of age, a road back to the title or any relevancy as far as being a title contender is going to be hard to get to. So we'll see. My guess is a little too late, but you guys know I'm a big Tony Ferguson fan despite him cussing me out at Media Day. But I love Tony Ferguson. So hopefully it's not a little too late and he can do some freakish thing and at 37 turn the clock and become a contender again. That'd be fun. All right, GC shouts out. She wants to know, not related to UFC 260. Moreno in your interview with him said that he does not expect to change his game plan all that much, but what do you think Figueiredo will do differently this time around? I think he can be successful with more leg kicks. Yes, so great question, GC. For those that haven't checked out my Brandon Moreno interview, go to Hablemos MMA and check that out. Obviously, it's in Spanish. If you do not know or understand Spanish, then that's going to be a bit difficult for you. But yeah. So basically, Moreno in the interview said that there's not a lot of things he can change because he almost won the fight. Like, the fight was a draw. So it's not like you have to come in with a totally different game plan because the previous one didn't work. No, a good portion of it worked. And this is something that coaches have to be very, very careful of. I remember talking to Coach Mike Brown and in one of our chats, and we were talking about Yanni Jacek's fight against Zhang Weili. And at the time, obviously, Weili's now fighting Rose Namajunas, but at the time, she wasn't booked. And there was talk of potentially running that one back. Obviously, probably the best women's fight in women's MMA history. You know, definitely the best strawweight fight ever. So he was telling me, like, you know, you got to be very careful about these things. It's almost easier if she would have lost because, you know, there's a lot more to work on. But when it's that close, when it's just, if maybe one or two more punches in the final round would have made the difference, right? When it's just that close, you can't really deviate too much from the game plan because a lot worked. So you have to do some really small adjustments and then hope that sort of does it. But yeah, you can't reinvent the wheel. So anyways, Moreno basically said the same thing, which obviously is a very smart thing to do. I think I think Moreno knows he can strike with Davison. He took the best shots from Davison and was still standing. I think he's going to come in more confident. I think at first he lost the first 2 rounds and he was a little bit tentative. Like, not that he didn't believe he couldn't take the shots, but hey, I got to be careful here. This is, he's got power, But now in this rematch, I do believe he goes in with the confidence. Again, still being careful, but he goes with the confidence knowing that he can take those shots. So that's one good thing from his side. And I'm sure they're going to do minor adjustments, especially in the wrestling. Moreno got takedowns basically at will. Whenever he wanted to take down Davison Figueiredo, he took him down. The problem was holding him down. So I think they're going to... And look, Moreno, in the last month, he got his black belt. So I'm sure he's working extensively on the ground to keep Davison Figueiredo on the ground. And on the striking, they'll polish some things up, but expect some of the same things. As far as Figueiredo, I think he came in too hot in those first 2 rounds. I think he underestimated Moreno's durability. I think Figueiredo thought he could just run through him like he has with many other fighters, but clearly that wasn't the case. And we saw him gassed out towards the end of the fight. And I think he's going to, obviously, as far as strategy, do some alterations. But the biggest one will be energy management. I think he's going to not start as hot. Obviously, make sure that he wins the early rounds as the fight will get more difficult for him later. And the opposite would play out for Moreno. That's just who they are as fighters. Moreno's not a late starter, but he shines later. And Figueiredo, shines early. So I think he's just going to reserve a little bit more energy, probably do a better job at defending the takedowns. His work on getting back up to the feet was on point. I mean, he got up every single time, so I don't think that's a big of an issue. I think it's stopping the takedowns and reserving a little bit of energy. I think that's what's going to come down for Figueiredo. As far as the leg kicks, sure. I mean, I think he's going to keep that. He had some good success with the legs, for sure. Good question, GC. Appreciate it. Alrighty, this is the time where I take things over to the YouTube live chat and I answer those questions. So if you got any questions about whatever, MMA, football, by that I mean soccer, life, whatever you want to talk about, make sure you throw it on the YouTube live chat and I will get to it in just a few seconds as I rearrange my coffee here. Alrighty. Okay. Eric Balut, good work. Got to get back to mine. What does that mean? I don't know, but I appreciate it. Daniel MMA wants to know, do you think it's a good look for Bellator if Chandler can win UFC title within 2 fights with the UFC? Sure, yeah, 100%. It's obviously a good look. It's just as good of a look if a UFC fighter leaves the UFC, joins Bellator, and becomes champion. Look at Gegard Mousasi, right? Like, look, that just proves like, hey, this guy's top. Certainly, Bellator needs more validation in the UFC, and I'm not dissing Bellator here. It's just the fact UFC is numero uno. Bellator is number 2, right? So obviously, it probably Bellator cares more about their fighters crossing over and doing well than the UFC cares about their fighters crossing over and doing well. Or at least Bellator benefits more from it than the UFC. But they've had already a lot of successful UFC fighters. I mean, Hector Lombard didn't become champion and didn't pan out, but he hung around long enough to be one of the best at 170 and 185. Eddie Alvarez became champion and fan-friendly and one of the best lightweights in recent times. Not the best, but certainly among them. What other Bellator crossovers have done well? There are many. I mean, Volkov was a Bellator product, right? He also fought in other organizations, but he's a top heavyweight nowadays. So yeah, there are many. So yeah, if Chandler goes over and picks up a big win and becomes champion, it proves what Bellator's been saying all along. Like, hey, we had the best lightweight, we had the best lightweight in our roster. And we're saying the same thing about our welterweight, believe us, right? So yeah, it's certainly a good thing for Bellator. And I think they know it as well. They I think for the Chandler's debut against Dan Hooker, they rolled out a video on their YouTube channel recapping some of the best moments that Michael Chandler had, and this was already after he left the company, so they were promoting him and were kind of like, hey, look, this is our guy. And I'm sure they would have liked that. They would have liked to see Michael Chandler stay, but I think they're also happy for him, and I think they're also happy that he's thriving in the UFC. I really do. All right, another question here. Looks like we got a lot of Bellator questions. That's a good thing. Tiernan Murray wants to know, what's your opinion on the upcoming Bellator light heavyweight tournament? I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a really fun tournament. I think might be the best tournament I've seen, at least on paper, in recent times from Bellator or from any other organization. I mean, this tournament is ridiculous. It's got names everywhere. There's maybe like one or two guys that I don't know that well. Let me pull that up. Let's see here. Yeah, check this out. Ryan Bader, we all know who Ryan Bader is. Lyoto Machida, obviously. Corey Anderson, this other guy that Dovlev Jen Yagshimuravov. No idea who that guy is. Vadim Nemkov, obviously I know who that is. Phil Davis, I know who that is. Anthony Johnson, I know who that is. Joel Romero, I know who that is. So yeah, they got huge names. They got the beautiful thing is also the styles, right? Like, it really does kind of feel like a blood sport type tournament, especially in this day and age in mixed martial arts. Everyone's so well-rounded. Everyone kind of looks like the same. Styles are kind of blurred out nowadays. But in here, you got very, very distinct styles. And something that I appreciate about MMA, sometimes even more than technique, is styles. I really love when a fighter has a style, when a fighter adopts certain skill sets that define the fighter and that sort of make it a part of, you know, their identity. That's always a fun thing to watch, and it's awesome. So Ryan Bader's got his own style. He's like a good old American wrestler, heavy ground and pound. Lyoto Machida, I mean, that's as unique as it gets. Maybe Corey Anderson, not so much, but even him, you know what he's gonna do in there and all that. Phil Davis, Anthony Johnson, I mean, Joel Romero. So it's all these mix of styles that and they're gonna fight it out and see how it goes. So it's gonna be a fun one. I love that Bellator. I think that Bellator tournament. I think it's great. I think they nailed it. I think it's awesome, and I'm very excited to see how it plays out. We'll see. But yeah, thumbs up, 10 out of 10 on that thing. Nat Annan, why do fighters like John Jones keep making the mistake of going public with their negotiations? This has never helped any fighter in the past. In fact, it usually has the opposite effect. Yeah, you're right. But sometimes public pressure, Conor McGregor has done it, and I think it's paid off. Jorge Masvidal, obviously you need a little bit of luck and some other circumstances on your side, but Jorge Masvidal went public, and once he started talking percentages about like what other athletes are making in other sports and what the UFC is making, and he's doing it on ESPN, I'm sure the UFC would like to silence that, right, to a certain degree, and they did. Have you heard Masvidal talk about fighters' pay since that summer of 2020? No, and he said, and this is no knock at Masvidal whatsoever. This applies to any fighter, and I understand why. It's understandable. But, he was like, oh, yeah, I'm here for my brothers and sisters and fighters' pay, and I'm going to advocate for fighters' pay now that I have this platform, this and that. They gave him what he wants, the deal that he wanted, and you haven't heard a word about that since, which is fine. Again, this is a prize-fighting, individualistic sport. You get your money and you get out. You don't vouch for others. That's how it works. That's why people suggest that they should unionize. But yeah, so totally not shitting on him, but I'm just saying, like, it's a very individualistic sport, and going public has helped some people in the past. Again, it's a very tough thing to handle or manage, should I say, but it can work. But again, it can have very negative side effects. Luckily, John Jones is a huge name and a big star, so the UFC wants him. It's not like they can just cut him and release him because he'll be a huge asset anywhere else. But they can put him on ice and sort of hinder his career. But at this point, he's so deep into his career that he doesn't need activity. I think if he takes off a few months here or a few months there, I think he'll be fine. And I think right now, this is where he has the highest earning potential of his career. I mean, he certainly towards the end, right? Like, he's got what, like 20 something fights? Like, he doesn't have 20 something fights left, right? He's got a few good ones because he's still in his prime. So he's got, if he wants to make the most money, it's now. So I can see him holding out for a while. So we'll see how it all plays out. But to your question, it sometimes helps to go public. It really does. You put the public pressure and a lot of people are vouching for Jones. You see it online. Like, people are saying, that man needs to get paid. So yeah, it's a weird thing to manage, but it can help. It doesn't always backfire, but you got to be very, very careful about it. Whoa. Anyone from UFC 260 you think would be good in bare knuckle? Francis Ngannou. Dude, imagine getting punched by Francis Ngannou bare knuckle. You're done. Most of the MMA fighters would be good in bare knuckle, except for maybe some jiu-jitsu guys and stuff like that. But if you got a striking base, like, think about like Vicente Luque and bare knuckle, dude. That dude will fuck you up. OMalley, maybe, but he doesn't seem like the bare knuckle type. But Luque, Ngannou, Miocic would do just fine. Yeah, I mean, if you're a striker, generally you would do all right in bare knuckle. UFC's finalizing Poirier versus McGregor 3-4 July. What happens to Dustin if you lose? You mean if he loses? Nothing happens to me if he loses. But if he loses, I think that's what you're trying to get at, Nat. Oh, hilarious. I just saw your what the fuck is that? Is that a bunch of dicks? But anyways, what happens if he loses? That's a tough one. Would you do a fifth one? Would you run like a fifth trilogy thing? Like, not what do we call them? Quintet? I don't know. But yeah, that'd be a weird one. I think at that point, with McGregor being such a big star, I think he kind of puts that rivalry, he kind of settles that. Like, think about it. McGregor at that point, like, he wouldn't even address Dustin Poirier. He would just move on and be like, hey, Nate Diaz or the title or whatever. And then Dustin Poirier will not be forgotten, but it kind of would seal that, right? I don't think there will be a fifth fight or anything like that. I think whoever wins, wins the trilogy and moves on. I think McGregor has more to lose than Dustin Poirier in this one. McGregor's stock right now, I think, is a lot more fragile than Dustin Poirier's. Dustin Poirier's stock right now is actually pretty strong, I would say. So if he loses, he's still a fan favorite. He's still a fighter that is elite, and they'll probably put him up against somebody else and see where that goes. And if he's able to mount a decent streak, he'll probably be fighting for the belt again. However, if McGregor loses, like a fight, a path back to the title, it'll be so difficult for him. So we'll see. But McGregor has way more to lose than Poirier in that fight. All right, thoughts on Jones burning all of the Nike shoes as a form of protest? Do you think Dana will care? So that's a funny question. So apparently there's tons of controversy. Apparently, no, I've seen the controversy between, I guess, conservatives. Is it really just conservatives? It might be, right? This whole thing, everything's like a liberal versus conservative issue nowadays. But so what's this guy's name? Lil Nas? I'm not even too aware of this guy. Lil Nas X. I heard of him, obviously. He had that one popular song called It's like that country song, but it was rap, right? Let me see, like Rodeo or something like that. Old Town Road. So that song blew up, right? So he's kind of been on my radar a little bit, but I don't really like listen to his music. And then he comes out with this other song called Montero, right? Was it? Where he's like basically giving a lap dance to the devil. And it's a very sensual video, and he's like grinding on the devil, and then he comes out with these Nike shoes, which is a collab, from what I understand, with another company that's collabing with Nike. And the shoes have like 666 on them and the devil star and all that. And they're very satanic looking. And apparently they got blood in the little air thing at the bottom. They got blood from one of the employees from the collab company, which is a company called, I don't know what other things they've done, but I would assume it's a big company to be working with Nike. MSCHF, streetwear company. Let me pull that up, see what other work they've done. Maybe I recognize it. It's in Brooklyn, obviously. Let me see what other shit they've done. So yeah, it's a streetwear design company that they did a collab with Nike and Lil Nas X. And yeah, so then everyone's tripping out about it. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan about it. Like, it's not my music, not my style. I don't like the whole satanic shit. Like, I kind of believe in ghosts and stuff, as silly as that sounds. So it's not really my alleyway. So I'm not here to defend Lil Nas, but at the same time, I'm not a huge fan of censorship. So if he wants to do it, go ahead. Like, it's a free country. You do whatever you want. I'm not gonna trip about it. I don't have kids, so I don't have to worry about them seeing that. I do think it's not a good thing for kids, right? If it'd be a movie, it'd be rated R. I wouldn't want my kids to be watching rated R stuff. But that's on the parents. It applies to movies. And look, like, satanic shit, like, bands and other musicians have been doing it for years, right? Like, look at like death metal and all that shit, and Ozzy Osbourne, like, all those people were like doing satanic shit. Marilyn Manson, right? Like, that whole thing has been around for so long. It's not like Lil Nas, maybe he did it differently now, obviously giving a lap dance. That's a bit new, I think, but the whole satanic shit's been around for a while. I mean, if you don't want your kids to watch it, then don't let them watch it. That's it. But I don't think he shouldn't be allowed to do that kind of stuff. But anyways, yeah, I believe John Jones sent a tweet correcting that, saying that he's not going to burn his Nike shoes, because Nike is actually suing that company that they were collabing with, because I don't know the details of it, but I think I'll have to read up on it. I don't want to do it right now live on air. But I'm sure, I don't know if they're suing them now that there's backlash about it, or if they weren't really aware of the project and they came out with a project and they were like, wait a minute, hold up. Oh, wait, no, hold up. No, it's actually a trademark infringement. That's what the lawsuit is about. So Nike's claiming that the aftermarket modifications create a dilution to their brand. So they might have came out with a certain shoe and then they modified it. So that's what might have happened. I got to look into this stuff, but I haven't paid too much attention about the lawsuit and all of that. But yeah, it looks like it's a trademark infringement. So on that end, like, if they did some such shit like that, where it's like, they're doing shit without permits or Nike's permission, then you got to get their clearance, especially if their logo is going to be on the shoe. So yeah, I don't know. All right, let's see here. What time is it? All right, I got maybe one or two more questions and then I'm gonna bounce. Okay. This is a great question. Darby Crash. Let's say Coker has enough money to get one high-priced heavyweight, JDS or Overeem. who does he pick and why? So if I were Coker, which I'm not, I'd go with Overeem. I do feel like Overeem has a little bit more life left in him than JDS. I mean, Overeem was higher ranked than JDS before they got released by the UFC. Also, Overeem, prior to that latest defeat, was considered a title contender, and a win could have maybe given him a title shot. I mean, remember, he was on his last run, right? So Overeem has more mileage left on him, more tread on the tire than JDS. Is he a more popular figure than JDS? JDS is an actual former champion. Overeem is not, but I think Overeem has done enough to kind of be a big name. So I'd go with Overeem. Yeah. I think he's a little bit more popular and a little bit more relevant than JDS today in 2021. Nat and on, people who aren't afraid of ghosts are the ones that are crazy. I mean, I get it. There's not like science and stuff behind it, but I had a paranormal, supernatural experience once, which I can get into maybe some other time because I got a few minutes left here before I hit the hour mark. But yeah, I believe in that shit. I believe there are things that we do not understand. Maybe now, maybe in the future we will, but to think that like we know everything, you know, like modern society has really only been around for a few years, right? Like the internet hasn't really been a thing since maybe like 20 years at most, right? There's like so many things that like we don't know about, and I think, you know, yeah, I don't know. There's so many things that I think we'll find out later, but we'll see what happens. But I do believe there are ghosts and there are other, I think maybe, I don't know, maybe it's all bullshit, but I'm not gonna discard the idea that there could maybe be stuff that we don't know about just yet. But anyways, all right, I'm gonna call it quits here. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much. Remember, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm going to be a little bit more active on these. I know I said this last week, but I really do plan on doing this more often. I took a bit of a break, a little bit of a hiatus, but I was really busy, especially getting my whole Spanish channel up with Hablemos MMA. Like, that was a lot of work, but it's finally up and running. So you know, now it's just about maintaining it, and obviously I'm still doing work there, and as far as like making it grow and all that, but yeah, that's kind of behind me as far as like the launch itself. So yeah, expect me to be around more in this channel on an English capacity, because I know I was around on a Spanish capacity, but yeah, I'll be around. So subscribe to the channel, more content coming your way. And what else? Check out that interview at Hablemos MMA if you speak Spanish, with Alejandra Lara before she fights at Bellator 255. And that's about it. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Danny Segura TV. So I appreciate all of you. Wish you a good week, and enjoy the fights this Friday or Thursday. I don't even know. But whatever day Bellator 55 is. All right. Peace. See you guys.